Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is a methods video on Relics. Specifically, we're talking about the thought process behind determining who is worthy of getting Relic. This channel is about excelling as a free-to-play player. Part of that is being very frugal and deliberate with your resources. You can't just Relic anyone. And it's important to understand what makes a good Relic. We're going to be covering various aspects of this game from a free-to-play perspective with an emphasis on Grand Arena. I hit Kyber every time in Division 1. There's no reason you can't be doing that. The first step in that is roster construction. What is going to hurt you in Grand Arena is wasted GP, and part of that is relicking the wrong characters or relicking characters who are unworthy of being reliced too high. So this is a general overview of the thought process behind narrowing down your roster, looking at various criteria, breaking down by character class, the mechanics of a kit, and other variables of roster need that will narrow down the final choice of the prioritization of relics. Before we get too deep into this, we are focusing just on Grand Arena. There's plenty of other characters who need to be reliced for other reasons. But for Grand Arena, what you are looking for are characters who will punish your opponent. You want characters who are going to be doing massive damage, who are super annoying with taunts or revives, and very generally, that's going to fall into two roles, attackers and tanks. Now that's a generalization because there's characters like Jolie and Daka who are not classified as tanks, they're classified as healers who are absolutely worthy of getting reliced. But what you see with them is they are very tanky characters on their own. And although they are not tanks technically, they do function effectively as tanks. And one of the reasons we're going to be emphasizing tanky characters and high damage characters, some high damage characters aren't classified as attackers also, is because one of the things you see in support characters or leader characters is they function well independent of relics. Their benefit to the team exists independent of the relic. And if the relic doesn't benefit the entire squad, then that relic can be deprioritized. Now let's narrow down a little further by looking at ability mechanics. There are certain commonality amongst characters that make a good relic. That includes when a relic allows for the character to one-shot your opponent, like Night Sister Spirit, Geospy, Droidica, or Sith Marauder. Mechanics for multiple attacks, like Han Solo, Jango, Canderous Ordo. If they're hitting multiple times per turn, they almost always make for a pretty good relic, like Ezra. Characters who are almost always counterattacking, like Nest or Wampa, and mechanics that are allowing for multiple assists. So characters like ARC Trooper or Sith Trooper, 3 Baka, or Chewie. Characters who are always assisting, always putting damage, kind of like with multiple attacks. Those almost always make for a strong relic. Annoyance mechanics, so characters like Malik, this is where I'm putting Daka and Jolie. Characters, if you ignore them for too long, they start causing problems. Shared stats, so like with R2, who's another one of those tanky characters who isn't necessarily a tank. Mon Mothma, characters who are just sharing their stats, so the higher they get, the better the entire squad is. And finally, boosted stats. This is for the characters who you don't really get the magic of that character until they get to Relic 7 or high relics. So like Grievous, Gas, those are characters, if you left them at Gear 12, they aren't going to function really at all for you. And you really need to get them to high relics in order to get the benefit. These are the types of mechanics that will be punishing your opponent. The more of these types of characters that you have reliced, the more damage and scarier your teams will be on offense or on defense. So if you're close on certain characters, with like maybe one Gear 12 plus piece away or the Gear 12 finisher away, and they don't have these kinds of mechanics, then it's safe to deprioritize that player and hold off. What you're looking for are characters with these types of elements, and if you have a character who's close who does have those kinds of mechanics, they're probably worth looking at. Next is a quick note on roster diversity. Spread your relics around. You don't want to be in a situation where you've put all of your relics on a few factions or on a handful of teams, and your opponent has the counters, takes them out, and doesn't have trouble with the rest of your roster. And conversely, you don't want to be in a situation where they've spread their relics around and you've had all of your relics on a handful of teams, and now you don't have the specific counters to take out a high relic character on some random team. Like for my roster, I try to get at least 1 or 2 relics on every team. I'm a couple pieces away from Malik. I'll have him soon. I'll have Django soon. Problem is I'm working on Jedi Knight Luke right now, so I've deprioritized putting relics onto a lot of these other characters, but I try to put my relics spread throughout my roster so that I can always be giving my opponents a lot of trouble. And now a note about arenas and metas. Don't be over-relicking your arena team unless it's something you care about. For me, I'm happy to get into the top 50 in my squad arena. Figure out what spot you're comfortable with, what you want your crystal income to be. Because if those relics aren't going to get you into the top 20 or in the top 10 or into the next prize tier, then those relics aren't doing anything for you. Like, metas change. Don't be chasing after the last meta. Like, go back to grade school, run to where the ball is going, not to where the ball was. Like, I see people still working on Jedi Knight Revan relics, still working on Sith Empire relics and old relics. Like, not that there aren't characters on those teams worthy of being relic, like I'm working on Malik right now, but like Bastila Shan doesn't need a relic if you weren't around for the Bastila Shan meta. And the big caveat being, this depends on your own squad arena. For instance, let's take a look at my own squad arena. Like, I started playing when Rogue One, or just after Rogue One came out, to give you an idea of how old my arena shard is. Here is what it looks like at the top of my squad arena. Like, there's some elite gas teams that are still able to make it, but basically it's all Galactic Legends through the top 20 and even deeper, basically into the top 30 is all Galactic Legends. Sometimes there's a couple Jedi Knight Lukes, but it's basically starting to bleed into the top 40. So let me show you where my arena team is. Here's my arena team. Like, I got Relic 2 on Echo and Rex. I'm still running Ahsoka in it. I've got 5s. The only one who is at Relic 7 is Gas, because that's good enough to get me into the top 50. Like, depending on mods, like I can usually handle a full Relic 7 Gas team no problem at these Relic levels. Most people are modding for offense, not defense, and an offensive modded gas team will be taken out by my team. And I'm not going to relic them up further until I have Shaak Ti and Arc Trooper ready to be moved up into relics to go for cam shards. And until I'm working on cam shards, which is not going to happen until after Jedi Knight Luke comes back, this is where they're going to stay unless I start slipping out of that top 50. I might move them up in order to hang on to a top 50 finish, but hopefully by then Jedi Knight Luke has come back. I've got him and I can hold on to a top 50 finish from then on. But look at your squad arena shard, figure out where those prize tiers are, and don't be over investing in characters who aren't helping you out anymore. And if you're in a situation where you don't have Gas, you don't have Darth Revan, you don't have those other characters, but the top portion of your arena shard is dominated by those kinds of characters, then hoard your materials, wait until you have unlocked those characters, then throw those materials on to relic them up immediately. Hanging on to a top 200 finish, it's not doing you anything to get that amount of crystals. You really want to be getting more. So save those materials for when you can immediately relic up a little bit faster and a little bit sooner and take advantage of some opportunities. And as we continue starting to consider how to determine which characters need to get reliced, I do want to put a note, especially because I'm working on Jedi Knight Luke right now, those requirements. When it comes to Jedi Knight Luke or the Galactic Legends or those characters where you are required to select characters who aren't really contributing to Grand Arena, like a lot of these characters you see down here with Phasma, the TIE Fighter pilots, or Rey with Rose and Holdo, there is an order to how you want to break them down in order to make sure that you're minimizing the length of time in which those characters are negatively affecting your top ADGP. Like for instance, I've come across in Grand Arena a Relic Rose Tico when my opponent had not even finished farming the Resistance heroes. If you have not finished farming the Resistance heroes, you have no business relicking Rose Tico or Holdo. Like, you are so far away from being able to have Galactic Legend Rey that all you are doing is hurting your top ADGP and getting it matched up against people like me who obsessively consider how they want to manage their roster and then are just going to stomp over you because you have wasted materials at a time when you weren't ready for them. So that's a way to introduce how we're talking about relic priority and relic order. So when you're working on the Galactic Legends or you're working on Jedi Knight Luke, based on the criteria that we were talking about earlier with character class or mechanics, certain characters are more worthy of being reliced than others, and you should be approaching your relics on those characters based on who is going to be hurting your opponents the most. So like right now I'm working on Jedi Knight Luke, so that's Chewbacca, Vader, Wampa are my big relic priorities right now. I mean, this is where I'm at right now. I'm a little worried that that event is coming back very soon. There's an insane amount of carbs that I still need for Rolo and Captain Han. I'm not too concerned about the gear 12 to relics, but those carbs, I'm very concerned. This is a big generalization of how I actually think about this. Like for Supreme Leader Kylo, Sith Trooper is kind of in a tier all on his own for me. Like, he's a character I really want reliced. The Resistance heroes, I would actually separate them from Rey. I would relic the Resistance heroes before I would relic JTR. And then there's characters like CLS, who I think some people would argue with me of whether that should be kind of like in this middle tier. But for me, CLS, he's not as scary of enough of an attacker anymore in the game where I prioritize him. His leadership is great with the counterattacks, but usually I have a tank in there, so he's not really going to be the one counterattacking for me. And really the damage from that team is coming from Chewbacca and the assists from Han Solo and 3 Baka now, very often being paired with that team. So when it comes to requirements for characters like these, one of the things I'm doing is working on these characters in tiers. Before Jedi Knight Luke was announced, I had been bringing up all of the Galactic Legend requirements to a Gear 11 staging ground that I kind of stopped at. So you can see a number of those characters I prioritized first with the new releases. So that's why you see like Hux and Sith Trooper, and the Resistance heroes are all at Gear 11. I've got through a lot of that headache kind of working towards them. And it's actually part of the reason why I don't have as many relics as a lot of other players, is I've been throwing all of my Kairos at those new releases. Like, if you saw earlier, I had a screenshot of my Mon Mothma. She's at Gear 11. I've got Karga and Mando. they're at gear 11. So all of my Kairos have been going towards a lot of these new characters and not towards relicking the top 80 portion of my roster, because one of the things that really helps you in Grand Arena is depth. And I've been working on making my roster depth as great as possible, and that's what the algorithm rewards in this game. It doesn't reward you for having a really good top 80 and a trash bottom half of your roster. Because if you have an identical roster, an identical top 80 as your opponent, but your opponent has the deeper roster, your opponent is going to be the one who wins. That is how to think about this game. Don't be thinking about in terms of like sandbagging and stuff that gets thrown around. It's how deep is your roster. And if you're a free-to-play player, you can't work on both. You can't be working on the top portion of your roster and deepening your roster at the same time. So I really emphasize putting resources on the right characters at the right time, and that's what this slide here is about. Is don't be working on these low priority characters before the high priority characters. Finish the high priority characters, move on to the medium ones, and then the low ones, try and do them all at once at the end. Just hoard until that point. So I kind of touched upon some of this with how I wrapped up my last point, but the last thing to consider is maybe don't relic. If you're finding that you are having a lot of unfavorable matchups, maybe you need to be deepening your roster. If you are still putting if you're in Division 1 or the high end of Division 2 and you're still putting Phoenix or Ewoks or Rogue One on defense, then your roster is not deep enough and you're probably going to lose because you are giving easy free banners to your opponent. And putting more relics into your top 80, increasing the relic levels of your top 80 GP, that is not going to be helping you. You should be taking those Kairos and those materials that are using to finish off all those Gear 12 pieces, take those materials and get some more Gear 11 characters. Get a lot of factions that you might not have ready. If you're still struggling in Grand Arena and not doing as well, throw those materials on Mon Mothma and get Mon Mothma going as soon as possible, because she's already paying huge dividends for me, and that's one of those characters you want to have ready as soon as possible. Save the relics for later. Thank you for watching. We're going to be doing a lot more videos like this. If you want to do me a favor, I am putting up the C3PO video I just put out. This channel didn't exist when the C3PO event came out. I still wanted to put the video out there, but the algorithm is not going to be finding it. But if it does get a bunch of watches, YouTube will start adjusting and finding my video. Those videos tend to be my highest watched videos on the channel, so that was the incentive behind creating that lowest viable teams for C3PO. Anyway, be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This has been Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.